We've done a process of this Olap database, and we now actually physically have an Olap database. We can use something like Excel or some other tool to access the data. So once again, coming back to my picture here, we ran a process of the project that was reading from the relational data, and that wound up creating the physical Olap database. So again, the cube and the dimension definitions in here are just definitions as files in my local folder for the local version of the project. Again, we have to actually right-click and process this and take all the prompts as we go through here, and then take run. And we see at the end that this actually reads from the underlying fact and dimension tables, or the views back in the database, to physically create the Olap database. So this process read from the relational data, read from the views, and generated a synthesized database. Now, how do I know that there's physically a database? Well, over in Management Studio, I actually did something here a minute ago. I'm going to disconnect and reconnect here. In Management Studio, I only had the relational database engine open a minute ago. I'm going to click the Connect drop-down in Management Studio and connect to an Analysis Services instance on my local host, and take Connect. And in the list of Olap databases, here's the mini ADW 2008 Olap. So that is a living, breathing Olap cube. Well, now I can launch Excel and go browse it. So I could open up Excel, and in Excel I can click the data drop down if I want to go access that Olap database as a power user, maybe even as a developer, to test the data. I can click the data drop down, take from other sources, and then from Analysis Services. Now I have to put in the name of the server, and that's just simply our local host, and Windows Authentication is going to be used as the default. And I get a list of the deployed databases. Now I want the one that was called mini ADW 2008 Olap. I created that today, it was last deployed just a few minutes ago. So I'll select the cube, which is the only component inside of it, and then take Next. And it actually saves this off as a connection string if I wanted to use it again. It actually saves it off as an ODC file. It's just a connection string that's stored under the hood as XML. I could actually save this to my local drive as mini ADW 2008 Olap.odc and use it again. Well, I'll take Finish, and I want to create a pivot table back in the default sheets. So I'll just take the defaults here and take OK. And over on the right hand side, I get a pivot table field list that has the table of contents of the Olap database. Now right now I have the two fact tables, internet sales and reseller sales. Well, I want to put the sales side by side. So I'll check the internet sales amount, and I will check the reseller sales amount. And I get 29 million and 80 million here. Now, by the way, if you actually run this on your machine, it's possible you might have slightly different numbers. From time to time, I put some rows in manually into the relational data, and so when it gets deployed here, it might be slightly different than your numbers. They should be fairly close, so you should have roughly 29 million and 80 million. Now, those are summarized, because remember, the default aggregation method back in the cube was sum. Well, I want to give this some context. I will come down to the geography definition, and notice how I have country, state, province, postal code, and city. Well, I can actually drag country down into the row label quadrant, and I get the breakout of sales by country. Well, then I can also take the next level down, which is the state, province, and drag that underneath the country. Well, I now have the ability to expand or collapse any of the countries to show or suppress the individual state provinces. So here's the United States, and it looks like Alabama doesn't do much in the way of customer internet sales, but they actually do a fair amount on the reseller side. And somebody like Oregon, well, we got over $1 million both on the customer internet side and on the vendor reseller side. Well, I can even go one further. I can drag a city and put that underneath state, province. And now if I expand the United States and I collapse all of these and come down to Oregon, actually I'll just scroll down. Well, here are all the cities in Oregon. So again, we have sales on one channel or maybe both channels for each of the cities inside of Oregon. So we're actually browsing against an Olap database right now. Now, we actually did very little with the geography dimension. We didn't even build a hierarchy. We're sort of simulating a hierarchy here by dragging in the levels to form a basic parent-child relationship here in the pivot table. Now notice how the other dimensions, things like product and order date and ship date and reseller, all we see are the keys. We don't see the other attributes. Well, we need to do a little bit of surgery of those dimensions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over to the project, and one by one I'm going to go through the dimensions. So I'll start with the reseller dimension. I'll come to the reseller dimension, I'll open it up. Now over on the left hand side it has the core keys, the geography key and the reseller key. Over on the right hand side are the possible attributes that we can browse on. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag over a couple of the attributes. The business type, the reseller name, and the product line that the vendor works with. Because we want to browse, we want to roll up sales, at least reseller sales, by those attributes. So we have to drag over which ones we want. Now once again, the reseller key and the geography key, we don't want to show those to the end user. So I will click on both of those and then right click, go to the property area, and set the attribute hierarchy visible to false. And then save that. Now that'll also prompt me to save the cube, and I have to say OK to that. So if I redeploy this project now, the user would be able to look at reseller data by any of those attributes. And we've hidden geography key and reseller key so the user can't see it. Now we'll go browse the data by reseller in just a few minutes. I want to do a little bit with the rest of these as well. So in Solution Explorer now, go to the promotion dimension. Now once again, I don't want the user to see the promotion key, so I will right click, go to the properties, go to the attribute hierarchy visible and set that to false. And then I will drag in the promotion name, the discount percent, the promotion type, and the promotion category. I'll drag them over to the left-hand side. They are now browsable attributes. So just because we have the columns in the data source view doesn't mean that they're browsable attributes. We have to bring them over. I'll save that and say OK to saving the cube. Then I'll come up to the product dimension. Same deal here. I will right click on the product key on the left, go to the properties, set the attribute hierarchy visible to false because I don't want the user to see that. And I've got a set of attributes I can bring over. The product alternate key, the product name, the subcategory name, all the way on down to the end here. So I'll drag all those attributes over. And then save that. Now, once again, there are many properties in the property sheet that once we get further in analysis services we'll look at. There are items in here that define some of the possible aggregation rules. There are items in here that define sorting rules. There are items in here that define any behavior with respect to a hierarchy. We'll eventually get to those. So again, I'll save that. Then I'll come up to the date dimension. Once again, we don't want the user to look at the date key, so I'll right click, go to properties, and set the attribute hierarchy visible to false. And then I'm going to drag in the other columns, the actual date. Now, one of these I'm going to hold back. I'm not going to bring in the day number of week. I only want to see the day name of week. If you're ever not sure about what the content is, we can actually right click and explore the data here. and we actually get a grid that shows us the columns. Well, we want the user to be able to look at data by the English day name of week, but we don't care about the day number of week for display. We just want somebody to be able to sort on that. Well, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to bring over everyone except for the day number of week. And also the date key. I don't need to bring that over because I already have it. So I'll bring over everything except for date key and day number of week. Well, how can I guarantee that if I'm looking at data by English day name of the week, that it uses the day number of week as the order? Well, I'm going to get into one of the properties here. I'm going to right-click on English day name of the week on the left-hand side. And first of all, I'm going to rename it. I don't need something that long. I'm just going to simply call it day of week. I can rename this to anything I want. I'll call it day of week. I'll right-click on it, and I will go to the properties for that attribute that I just renamed. Well, I'll come down to the key column. In other words, what is the underlying key on which this is based? I'm going to click on the ellipsis out to the right of the key column. I'm going to change it from the English day name of the week. I'm going to push that over to the left. I'm going to drag over the day number of week. So the underlying key is the index. And then I'll take OK. Now, I also have to tell it to order by the key. So I'll come down to the order by property, and I'll set that from name to key. Now, when it does that, it actually now no longer has a name column for what the display is going to be. So for the name column, for what's going to be displayed, I'll click on the ellipsis. I'll tell it that the display is going to be the original English day name of the week. So a little bit of surgery we have to do there to get that to work. But now, chronologically, those will show by Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They won't show alphabetically. So again, I had to change the key column to the day number of week to use the numeric index. I had to tell it to order by the key, but I had to tell the name column what's going to be used for the display binding to use the original description. Well, I'll save that and take OK. And then for the customer dimension, finally, I don't want the user to see the customer key or the geography key, so I will right-click, go to Properties, and in the attribute hierarchy visible, I'll set that to false. And I want the user to be able to look at sales by the full name, by the marital status, by the gender, yearly income, and English education. So I'll drag those over as well. And I'll save this. And take OK. Well, I'll get some windows open here. I'll click the window drop down and close all the documents. I'll come back to Solution Explorer, and I will right-click and I'll reprocess this. And say yes to any prompts that come up. And then take Run. And then that process through again. I'll close here, and I'll come back over to Excel. Now, what I want to do is have Excel see the updated version. Well, it actually cached the metadata based upon the last process of it. So with the pivot table selected here, up in the Options menu, I'm going to take the option in the toolbar to refresh all. Now what happens is, over in the metadata on the right, now we see the new attributes. Now I'm going to actually clear everything out here so we can look at some different things. So I will actually clear. I'll remove all the fields in the row labels area, and I will remove internet sales so that all I have left is reseller sales. Well, I'll scroll down into the reseller dimension, And I will take a look at the business type first. So I'll put the business type in the row labels, and then take the reseller name and drag that inside of the business type. Well, now I have the different vendors by specialty bike, value added, reseller, and warehouse, and then the individual vendors inside of here. So we have the reseller sales amount by vendor within the vendor type. Well, I want to see the days of week across the top. Just some different examples of what we can do here. Now the data is basically joined by the underlying relationships. I'm going to come up to any one of the date dimensions. Now remember, we have an order date, we have a ship date, and up further we have a due date. Well, I'm going to look at data by order date. So I'll come down to order date, and I will take the column for the day of week, and I'll spread it across the top in the columns axis. Well, notice how we have the breakout now of sales by day. That's actually pretty cool. So we now have the breakout of vendor sales by vendor type, and within vendor type the original, the underlying vendor names by each day of the week. Well, maybe we want to filter this just for one product category. I'll come down to the product dimension, and I will take the product subcategories, and I'll put them into the report filter quadrant. Well, an end user now, maybe they want to, I'll expand this, and I'll say I want to select multiple items. I'll deselect everything, and then I'll come down and I will pick road bikes and touring bikes. I want to see the combined sales for road bikes and touring bikes. And I get the sales for the days of the week. Once again, no joint statements that we're writing. We are going against the Olap cube, where the facts and dimensions are basically built in. Now, we could sit here for hours, even with this few set of dimensions, and look at data by all the different possibilities here. Like, for instance, I could take the promotion, the individual promotion names, and put it up in the filter here, and look at the sales, maybe just for one promotion. Now, I could look at where we had sales where there was no promotion involved. I could change this to no discount up in the drop down. And the numbers go down slightly. Not significantly, but slightly. So now we're seeing the products that were sold at full revenue where there was no discount involved. Obviously, I could change this to a multi-select and pick whichever promotions that I want. And then I could look at these for specific countries. I could come up to the geography dimension, take the country, put that in the report filter quadrant, and I want to look at them just for France. Well, the numbers go down even further. Matter of fact, looks like not many people in France buying road bikes or touring bikes or whatever on Monday. So we're breaking this data down further and further. This is what we can do, coming back here to the project. This is what we can do once we have the fact dimension relationships set up in the dimension usage. When the end user is slicing and dicing here, this ultimately goes back to the underlying dimensions and the relationship to the fact tables, whether they are direct or whether they are indirect. So we're seeing a taste of Olap right now. Now, in later sections, we're going to look at how to build hierarchies, how to break this out further so that we could drill down from year to quarter to month to day to whatever levels we have. Now, we can still, even without a hierarchy, I could come up here and I could take the order year, take the order fiscal year, and put that above the day of week in the column labels. Well, I can see in 2007, I can expand or collapse any one of these. I can see in 2007 what was my sales Monday through Saturday. And then I could see in 2008 my sales against Sunday through Saturday, whatever the dates happen to be. So even without a hierarchy, we still have, we still can simulate these parent-child relationships here in something like Excel. But ultimately, we're going to get into actually building user hierarchies and optimizing them with attribute relationships. That'll come later. So we've seen a fair amount already, but still a lot of additional things that we can do here in the cube and in the dimension editor. Now, in the final video, we are actually going to take a look at how to put a calculation into here to run on the fly, where we want to do something involving division. We want to calculate a profit margin. And then also going to look at how we can build a role. Maybe we have people who can only see mountain bikes in Canada, so we'll see how to put them together. So we're near the end here, but hopefully getting a taste of what can be done with Olap.